Today we're installing LVP. Now, I've installed wood and composite flooring before, but this is my first time installing luxury plank flooring. I'll be installing the flooring in a bedroom and giving you beginner tips and tricks along the way. The planks we're using are 9 inches wide by 6 feet long, and I'll have a link below to this exact product and all the tools we're using. After moving all the furniture out of the way, we're going to sweep the floor and prep the floor for the installation. But before we do that, let's talk about design. I went to Floret.com because that's the planks that we're using. At the very bottom, you can work with your design through Room Studio, and they have preset up rooms that you can see different colors and see how they're going to look. So you can decide what color you're going to go with. And the cool part is outside of their pre-designs, you can also upload a photo of your own room, and then you can change the color of the flooring and see how it's going to look in that room. After playing with the designs, we ordered samples so that we could see what the boards actually look like in person, which was really nice, and put them against the flooring in the room so we can decide which color we like best. The color we picked was Jova, and now that the design part was picked out, let's get back into the install. After cleaning the floor, we check level before we start installing the LVP. If your floor is uneven, you want to level the floor before installing. But first, let's talk about trim, because ideally you want to remove it like this. But in this circumstance... Alright, so two ways when you're installing LVP is you can remove the trim and the quarter round. Now this is recently installed baseboard or trim, so we're going to actually leave this. I want to make sure the wall is straight so our flooring stays straight as we install across the room. A simple way to do this is we measure off the wall, pick an even number. I picked 5 inches. You put down tape and you mark it with your pencil. And you repeat this a few times along a few different spots along the wall. Then we're going to see if the wall is flat so our flooring stays straight across the room. We're going to use a laser level here. Place something at the end of the laser so you know it's hitting your mark. Then we check with the measuring tape to make sure the laser level is hitting 5 inches all the way down. After checking, our wall is straight, so we're going to start taping 1/4 inch spacers to our trim because luxury vinyl flooring is a floating floor, and you need a 1/4 inch gap for expansion and contraction purposes for the final finish. For installing the floor with the tongue and groove design, we want to start on the left side and work our way right. And the first board is in, but wait. Didn't I read about a vapor barrier? Yes, but we're installing over existing wood floors, which already have a vapor barrier underneath. So in this case, a vapor barrier is not required. It is recommended to add a vapor barrier if you're installing on concrete, for example. So now it's time to install the second board. A quick tip, you want to flip the board around before you mark it and make your cut. I recommend using a 12-inch speed square and a pencil so you can make a mark all the way across. And cutting flooring can be a mess, but with LVP, one of the ways you can cut it is a utility knife. There are a couple different options as well, which we'll get into a little bit later on. Once the board is cut, you just snap it in place, very simple and easy. Next piece locks in flush, and now we have the first row in. We use our tapping block for a nice snug fit. Linked below, we have the kit we used. It has all the tools you need, from spacers to the tapping block here, and the pull bar that we're using right now. And just like that, we have the first row in. Nice clean look. And now we can start our second row. The second row, there are 2 different methods that you can use. You can use the cutoff from the first row to start on the right side this time and work your way left. Or you can cut a piece in half and start on the right side and work left, just like the first row. Either way works. It comes down to preference and how you want the floor laid out. Just remember you want at least an 8-inch space between the seams or butt joints in the floor. To install the first board for the second row, you simply match the groove and tongue and angle the LVP floorboard into place. The piece should snap into place, just like that, and then you can use a small mallet to lock it in and level the boards. Now, another way you can cut this LVP is using this flooring cutter tool. I found it way faster than using a utility knife, and unlike using a saw, there's no dust, so it's super clean and easy, and you can keep it right next to the boards that you're installing. So right here we're making a tapping block, which you can make with a scrap piece of board. You use that to install your boards tight for a nice clean finish. So we can use that tapping block to hit in the next board. You don't have to hit it super hard, it's a love tap. And then when you're tapping in the end to meet up with our 1/4 inch spacer by the wall, you gotta make sure we have a 1/4 inch gap along every part of the wall. Using that vinyl cutter right there makes the installation process so much faster, and the cuts are just so clean, quick, and easy. I highly recommend it. I'd either rent one or buy one if you're going to do multiple projects. Alright, so just want to do a quick shout out and thanks to our sponsor, Floret. This project wouldn't be possible without their luxury vinyl plank flooring, and you can find the link and the color of this exact flooring below. Now, right after we put in this board and we were starting to put in the second one for the second row here, we realized we made a mistake. Now this piece doesn't go in because the floor is moving and it should be secured. Alright, you don't want to make this mistake. The issue that we're having here, right, is because it's floating and it can move, that's not going to stay. So first, after you put in the first row, you need to secure the first row down, and then you can start working on your second row. What you want to do is there's two things you can do. You can either screw this down, or you can go ahead and put weights down. Here's a closer look at the Moden LVP Signature Series flooring. With the backing, it's got the underlayment on top. It's 100% waterproof, and so later in this video we actually put it to the test to see how durable and waterproof it really is. There are a couple different ways that you can install this flooring. I'm trying a couple different methods just to show you and see what works best. This way I connected the two ends first and then I tapped it in from there. It works pretty well. We got it together fairly quickly. And then here I'm also showing there are two different tapping blocks. There's one that's part of the kit, and then the other one here is the one that we made ourselves with just a scrap piece of flooring. Alright, so in this area, I'm trying to work this board in this way. But it's too tight, so I can't use my hammer. That's where this tool comes in handy. So what I found, if you're up against the wall, this pull bar works really well where you can't get the hammer, so you can go ahead and get those boards nice and tight where they butt up against each other. If you found some of these tips and tricks helpful and found some value out of this video, please like and subscribe. It helps support our channel and keeps letting us do what we're doing. Alright, if you're in a situation like this and you have to cut a really wonky piece, I highly recommend the contour gauge, because you can form it right around that area that you have to cut and lock it in place and mark it on your board. And oh my gosh, what a lifesaver. So much easier, and you can figure out exactly how you have to cut your piece. This is not an easy cut to make, and the first one turned out a little off. So we did it again, and the second time is the charm. Nice clean finish. Another method for installing these is connecting the tongue and groove lengthwise first and then hammering it down with your mallet. And I found that to actually be a little bit faster than trying to connect the two ends beforehand. And then the last method that I tried was where you can connect the two ends and then you can install an entire row at one time. So you're on your knees all day installing this floor. If you want to save your knees and back, check out the Kneelit V3. This thing works awesome for putting in flooring. It's super comfortable, adjustable, and you can move around super easily. It also locks in place when you put pressure down on the seat, and it's easy to put together and take apart. As you can see here, I was playing around with it and seeing how hard it was, and it only took less than a minute. Having spent all day on my knees installing this flooring, using the Kneelit was so much faster and way more comfortable personally, especially if you're putting in a lot of flooring at one time. Definitely worth the investment. Now, if you're wondering, this isn't going to look clean, this is a terrible finish for this floor. Don't worry about that, because you're supposed to space it out, because floating floors need that space for expansion and contraction. When you get into odd angles of the floor, here's a quick angle tip. Figure out what angle your board is coming in at. You can actually just use a spare piece and use it to mark that angle, and it's super fast and easy. Saves you so much time. There's no math involved. The only thing you have to be careful about is if you are going to cut it with a utility knife like this, you got to make sure you scored enough times, because I did not on this one and it snapped and broke the board in the wrong place. That was a mistake I'd highly recommend avoiding by just scoring it more times or using a saw or the flooring cutter to cut it properly. As you can see, I did it again. You know, you make a mistake, you learn from it, and you fix it. And this time, it cut nice and clean, and fit perfect with that 1/4 inch gap right there at the end. So that's so much faster way to figure out angles, especially when you're installing a lot of flooring like this, versus having to try and figure out the math behind it. There is a learning curve when installing this flooring and figuring out which method's best when you're installing. But once you get the hang of it, it goes pretty fast and smooth, even if you're a weekend warrior or DIYer. But the question is how durable is this stuff and is it actually waterproof? So let's find out. Alright, let's test how durable this LVP is with a hammer. I mean, after smashing it with a hammer, it definitely holds up to my durability test. I mean, it's pretty scratch resistant. I was trying to scratch it pretty hard, but let's see what happens once we soak it in water for over 24 hours straight and see how durable it is after that, and is it really waterproof. Alright, so we left it in water for over 24 hours, and I mean, it looks very waterproof to me. It's still intact. There's no signs of any issues. We're scratching it here with these pliers, and nothing's really happening to it. So durability, give it a thumbs up. Alright, I've seen before on other wood flooring where over time gaps can appear, so I'm going to show you how to fix that, and we're going to test the top tips that we saw online. Alright, we took the top tips that we saw online and we're going to test them out. So first is you put a weight with tape down, and you can use a hammer to fix that gap. We banged on this thing pretty hard with a lot of weight on it, and it didn't do anything. So I would say that tip failed. Tip number 2, just kick it with your foot. As you can see, we're kicking it super hard and nothing's moving. Number 3, I saw that you could use a suction cup to help move that board and fix that gap. So we grabbed our Grabo, suctioned it to the floor, and hammered it in. And look at this, it actually worked. It closed that gap and fixed that issue. And once you're all finished installing your floor, you can add your quarter on for a nice clean finish. I think LVP flooring is a simple install for a big impact, durable, and overall a nice clean look. I love the color of this one. Hope you enjoyed the tips and tricks. Please like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it.